Welcome back to the third episode 3 of the Pregame podcast. We thank all of you for joining us today on this Saturday morning. We're recording on Thursday, but tune in every Saturday morning. We're going to be releasing our weekly pregame podcast. I'm Kevin Towle. Back with us, we got Spencer Pearlman, a.k.a. the Archduke. We got Abdul Koroma, a.k.a. Dullo. And, of course, the mayor himself, Josh Tambor. Guys, welcome back. Episode 3. How you doing?
Buongiorno.
It's absolutely fabulous to be here.
Well, I mean, what a sports week, right? I mean, these NFL playoffs just continue to be unreal. I mean, you have a Green Bay team who I've never seen a bigger choke job in a long time. You have the cheaters up in Foxborough. I'm sorry to our Patriots viewers, but I'm sorry. That's the way it is. We got some NBA action going on. The Knicks, 2 in a row. What is going on over in New York? The New York Knicks, I'm shocked, but, I'm not going to complain about it. We're going to talk a little MLB today for the first time in the pregame podcast. We're going to catch you up on the Yankees and Mets offseason moves. We're going to talk some college hoops. And, of course, we will have our personality statement. But, of course, I think everybody wants to talk about what in the world happened to the Green Bay Packers. Stay with us.
Sometimes I dream
that he is me.
Got to see it how I dream to be. Boom, 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 boom. I dream I move.
I dream I move like Mike.
If I could be like Mike.
Like Mike.
If I could be like
What's up, Mike? I could be like Mike.
Well, there was certainly no shortage of entertainment this past weekend in the AFC and NFC title games. We're going to recap both games. Given that there's a 2-week break, we're not going to give our Super Bowl picks until next week's show, but we will go over the games this past weekend. We'll talk some NFL coaching changes. We have some updates there. And if you want to watch the Pro Bowl, be my guest, but when you have Andy Dalton as a freaking quarterback, I don't know if there's much to say there. Maybe we'll watch it for ODB, but minus ODB, if you're watching the Pro Bowl, you need to figure out something else to do with your life. But anyway, let's start and talk about, we'll start the first game, the Packers and the Seahawks. Guys, Abdul, what the heck happened? What happened?
All right, I think that the number one culprit for this is Mike McCarthy. Prevent defense does nothing but prevent you from winning. Literally. I think that was one of the most conservative. Play calling I've ever seen on both sides of the ball, offense and defense for the Packers. Running the ball with just straight up running the ball with lazy majority of those. I think they ran 86% of the time in the second half. I mean, even if you have a hobble to Aaron Rodgers, this is the MVP. This is the MVP of the whole league here. Put the ball in his hands. Let it go to his playmaker.
Give the man the rock.
I know. So I'm saying, at the end of the day here, they were up, and they were up at that point. But you also see, I think a lot of people forget that this Packers team screamed in discipline at times. On Clinton Dix's first interception, you have the offensive lineman doing that 15-yard taunting penalty, which pushed them back 15 yards back to the 21.
A lot of people don't talk about that. That's a good point.
That takes away a touchdown. You have on the onside kick, the third string tight end who's meant to block goes up to catch the ball. That's a lot of that's a lot of lost discipline. I think that falls on McCarthy too. That to be in a game of that magnitude and you have guys making dumb penalties like that or dumb mistakes like that. It screams a lot to the coaching, the whole coaching fiasco that he did at the end of the time. I think pretty much.
That's a great point, Tambor. Rodgers was clearly not 100%. You saw that when he was when he had that scramble towards the end of the game. But Russell Wilson, minus overtime, was very mediocre. Tell me a little bit about that.
So the statistics mean nothing. Great winners show up when it counts. That guy showed up when it counts. He made the throws he needed to make. He hit his guys. and he overcame a ton of adversity. I want to go back to Abdul's point. I agree with you, Abdul, 100%. And it is a fault of coaching. And, all last week we heard, or all this week, this is a special teams blunder, and there's this. I mean, people have to make excuses for the Packers. The Packers had no excuse. Packers had zero excuse.
Yep, nothing.
And as a Giants fan, how many times? I'm telling you, this reminded me of Kevin Gilbride's offensive play calling.
Kill drive.
How many times have we seen prevent offense prevent a win? I completely agree with you, and I think the two biggest plays in the fourth quarter that people overlooked, which sealed the game. So I know we'll get to Morgan Burnett's play in a second, I'm sure. With 56 seconds left at the 50-yard line, you're driving down the field, and you don't burn a timeout, and you've got 3 timeouts. I was actually watching the game with our producer last week, and we're sitting here screaming at the game, call a timeout, call a timeout. I mean, it was.
It's like you never coached a football game before. It's unbelievable. Spence.
It's unbelievable, and Dom Capers looked lost calling defense. You're getting pressure on him all game. You're getting pressure on Russell Wilson all game, and you start rushing 2-3 guys because you want to drop guys.
Yep.
Like, stop it. That's enough.
Spence, have you ever seen more of a duck in that 2-point conversion? I mean, the Packers had him, right? You're watching this game, you're saying, all right, they're not getting this 2-point conversion. He throws a prayer, and they're watching like they're, it's like they're in La La Land. Are you kidding me?
That's completely inexcusable. I forgot who the defensive back was right there.
Clinton Dix.
Yeah, haha. The joke's on him.
No pun intended, folks.
But that was just terrible. Like, he could, yeah, that was just bad. I mean,
there's nothing else to say. You're lost for words, right? I mean,
it was just bad.
And here's the thing I want to ask you, Spence. It's like, you listen to the experts talk about this onside kick situation. Do you put your best guys there? It's a hands team. You want the guys who can catch the ball. Was he in the wrong in trying to go for that ball? Like, what? How do you gotta catch that ball? Hold on to the rock.
All right.
What happened there?
So he's on the hands team for a reason, because he has good hands and because the team is confident in him that he can catch that. The ball came right towards him. It didn't really look like it was any different from any other onside kick, like the way it bounced. So I think it's really more on him for not catching it. I think he should have been in the game. But I just kind of feel bad for him because the loss is completely on him.
You know what? I mean, it clearly, you could see his face on the sideline. He clearly, you gotta feel bad for him. You're absolutely right. I want to talk a little bit about. So we can all agree that Mike McCarthy just, not only was he out coached, he just was straight up dumb. I mean, right? I mean, I feel comfortable saying that he was flat out dumb. He looked like he never coached a football game before in his life. Guys had Brett Favre, said Aaron Rodgers. He only has one Super Bowl. You know what? That's unacceptable in my opinion. Let's talk about Marshawn Lynch for a second. He carried that offense because, let's be real, Russell Wilson, as good as he is, and he did come through in the clutch overtime, he was not good the first 4 quarters. You could argue that Matthews hit on him. Some of the announcers were saying he may have gotten a slight concussion. I mean, he did not look like himself out there, but Marshawn Lynch played great. But can we discuss these touchdown celebrations, these $20,000 fines, wearing the gold shoes? Is the league just missing their priorities here, Abdul? Or did they get it right? Was it inappropriate behavior?
I think that a lot of people want to go on about Marshawn and his antics, but I think that this honestly dates back to his days in Buffalo. This was a back who was a first-round drafted, but I feel that he was disrespected not only by the media, but by the league those first years in Buffalo. So he's taken on this sort of rebel personality that he's like, screw the league, screw the media, I don't want to talk to anybody, I'm going to do me. At the end of the day, it's his money that he's losing. It's not our money. It's his paycheck. It's his $20,000. It's his $25,000. He's a guy that we saw today at the beginning of the season of this year when he wanted to hold out, for more money. But when a 29-year-old back, I mean, how much more money are they going to make off that deal? I think exactly he's a guy that runs to his own beat, and I don't think that it's a huge deal. But we know how conservative the NFL are and how much of a family product they try to be. So I think that it's really more on Marshawn Lynch for himself. He wants to pull these antics. It's his own money that he's losing. I don't really have a problem with it, but I understand the NFL's point of wanting to keep the family product, pretty much clean.
No, that's definitely a good point. I mean, he had one heck of a game, that's for sure. Tambor, let's talk about Burnett. He drops to the floor and not returning the interception. Can you break that down for me? I mean, that's another question that everybody is asking about right now, right? I mean, break that down for me, please.
Great play by Morgan Burnett, I only saw the review after the fact, or the replay after the fact, rather. That guy had more green than the middle of the United States.
Yeah, what is he doing?
I mean, this guy, he went into championship mode, and I'm telling you, if there are football gods, they sat there and they whacked their finger and said, oh, no, for that, you just don't even get the catch. It's inexcusable. The Packers went into championship mode with 5 minutes left in the game, and after the big momentum was not swinging their way at all. It's completely undisciplined football, and it goes back to the coaching thing.
Exactly.
It goes back to that you. And this is where, I was thinking about this all week. So as Miami guys, we love Jimmy Johnson. But Jimmy Johnson once famously said after he blew out Notre Dame, and Lou Holtz accused him of, basically keeping his foot on the gas, it's not my fault your team didn't come to play. I'm of the personal philosophy that you keep your foot on the other team, on the gas pedal on the other team until the clock is done. You blow them out, you do whatever you need to do, because at the end of the day, these guys are professionals. Yeah, sportsmanship is important, and we want to keep it clean, and we were talking about family product, but in order to win, your objective is to win. I mean, if I'm Morgan Burnett, I'm running as hard as I can, and if I need to throw an elbow at somebody, move. I'm taking it to the house if I need to. I mean, just completely undisciplined and unacceptable football player from the Packers.
No, it really does come down to coach. You're absolutely right. And as you said, you have to play to win, right? I always think about Herm Edwards. You play to win the game. And before we talk about the Colts and Patriots, we could talk about the Colts and Patriots game and the situation for days, right? But I want to just talk real quick about what's going on in the NFL coaching reigns before we move on to the Colts-Patriots. Todd Bowles looked great in his first introduction as the Jets head coach. I think we can all agree that was a good hire. Some other news, John Fox to Shy City to coach the Bears. Also brings Vic Fangio, I hope that's how you pronounce it. And then Adam Gase will take the offensive coordinator job for John Fox in Chicago. Big question is, can he help Jay Cutler going forward? And I know, Abdul, you're going to touch on Jay Cutler a little bit later in the show, but that's one thing that everybody has to think about. And Gary Kubiak, who before was saying he wasn't going to take a head coaching job, goes to Denver. I like the move. Definitely could help Peyton Manning's decision to stay around. Then, of course, the one vacancy that remains is Atlanta, but it looks like it's Dan Quinn's job to take. And looks like Kyle Shanahan as offensive coordinator is pretty much a done deal. Obviously, you have to wait until after the Super Bowl. But the one thing I want to talk about before we move on to the Colts and Patriots is the biggest clown of them all, the biggest clown of 2015 so far goes to Mr. Doug Marrone, who thought he was a lock for the Jet job and it's taken up the Jags offensive line. What a joke. Doug, you are a clown. But you know what? We have more issues to talk about because Colts and Patriots, a lot of stuff's about to go down.
Giant ball, tittle back to pass. Here it comes. A new giant pass. Fisher's training table bread. Official bread of the New York Giants. So do as the Giants and pass training table bread around your table for balanced protein for extra play power. Keep fit like the New York Giants with training table bread by Fisher.
All right, so our New York Knicks miraculously have now won 2 games in a row. First game being on MLK Day, where they beat the New Orleans Hornets and Anthony Davis. And then they win the toilet bowl, as I was calling it, against the 76ers in Philly. I mean, it doesn't really matter. They suck anyway. They're probably going to still get a top 5 pick. But, Spence, I wanted to ask you, is Melo going to get shut down still after the All-Star game? Clearly, you can argue, well, Melo's playing. They've won 2 in a row. Are we thinking too much about this, or is he going to get shut down? What are your thoughts about this?
First, I'd like to say these last 2 wins have made me probably happier than I've ever been as a Knicks fan before, just because of the ridiculous low we've had going into those 2 wins.
It's true.
But I still think Melo is shut down. If not completely, then I think he's going to be on a very, very, very limited basis where he's playing like once every 3 or 4 games, probably against the bigger teams. I think it's hard to shut down any athlete just because like anyone who's played a professional or not a professional sport, any sport, knows that you want to win every single time you step in the court, and unless if you're actually like hurt, you're gonna play. Like I imagine there's much, much more pressure on someone getting paid $22 million a year also. So I mean, I think he's gonna get more rest, but I don't think he shuts it down completely.
And one thing, Tambor, you love Galloway. Yeah, he's been playing pretty well.
You know my boy Langston Galloway's been playing great. Listen, on the Carmelo front, unless he gets Kobe's bones off recipe, he's not doing anything. You know, with the Knicks should decidedly, and I know no sports fan will want to hear this, the Knicks should decidedly keep losing. I can't tell you, for as happy as I was they won the tournament, they won 2 games in a row. It's worsening their opportunity to go get Jahlil Okafor. Look, the Knicks need it completely gutting. It's like doing demolition on your house. You've got to tear the sheetrock all the way down to the stud. The Knicks have to get back to basics and start building things, and they can't do what Isaiah Thomas did years ago, which they already pursued themselves with anyway, and mortgage away their entire future on draft picks.
No, that's definitely a good point. Abdul, go ahead.
I think it's like again, like what Spencer was kind of saying with regards to the way we're like looking to the future. It's good that we're playing the young guys. I like Calais being up there, showing, and he has game. He's really produced. I think he's spicy too defensively. But I think another thing we have to talk about with Carmelo is I think he's going to play up to the All-Star game because as you said, it's an ego thing for these guys.
He needs to recruit the heck out of players this week.
I don't even think that really. I think that honestly, we're due for a big rebuild. Now, I don't think that, this is the age of Twitter and, being able to put a lot of, being able to build your brand from anywhere. So I think that, honestly, if we can just put together a team and not throw, maximally at players who are like second-tier stars who wouldn't particularly put us over the edge, I feel that if we can trade out Jose Calderon, who has a contract for like another 2 years. I heard we're trying to shop Prigioni for a pick 2 because he has like 1.3 guaranteed money next year. And then start to put together a smart team, sort of like Atlanta, who don't have Atlanta have 2 bona fide stars, fine, but not like a super team. Just building an overall 10-deep team that is smart, plays smart, good defense, takes good shots, and build towards something. That's what I think that would be better for the Knicks' future right now.
All right, a couple of things. 1, 2 wins is not going to be the difference between us drafting Jahlil Okafor and then getting like the 13th pick and getting Frank Kaminsky. If you look at the history, who's a very good player, but he's not a top 5 pick. If you look at the history of the draft lottery since they moved to the modern standards, only 3 times is the worst record ever gotten the first pick. You know how many times? Which worst record? Well, which of the bottom 4 or 5 teams ended up getting it the most? The third one. So being like 15-67 versus 17-65, 20-62, whatever it is, it's not going to make a difference. Either way, the Knicks are going to have a top 5 pick, and they're going to be able to choose a great player.
It's a good point, although I will say that I am confident that Adam Silver will maybe do what David Stern did back in 1985 with Pat Ewing and sort of put an extra ping pong ball in there for the Knicks during the draft lottery. That's a conspiracy theory I have, but I think he realized that the Knicks and the New York market would benefit greatly, as would the league, from the number 1 pick. Now, I want to talk about one thing here, and we probably do have some Miami Heat fans listening in. Our executive producer, Josh Baumoehl, a.k.a. Dudley, himself being a huge Heat fan. So forgive me here. Don't hate. Please don't hate. But Forbes listed you guys as the number 1 fan base in the league for 2015. Now, from a business standpoint, I can see where they're coming from. They have great social media presence. Their TV ratings are actually much higher than I expected. They have good attendance numbers. So on paper, it makes sense. But, I mean, Abdul, you lived in Miami. Tambor, you lived in Miami. I lived in Miami. That's not a loyal fan base in the sense where they're going to go to South Beach before the end of the game. They're going to show up at halftime. Are they serious? Does Forbes have any clue what's going on? Do they even know, Abdul? What's going on?
At the end of the day, and you know what's worse about this list? It's I think it's from the past 3 or 4 years, but they were taking it when you have like the greatest show in town. So I think any city would be galvanized. But I don't know what Forbes are talking about. These are guys, these are fans who would show up, in the second quarter at best. First quarter, you think that there were 1,000 people in there, and it sums it up even in that Spurs game, that game 6, them walking out with like 30 seconds left, thinking it's game over before Ray Allen hits that miraculous 3, and them trying to run back into the court. And even now, I think in this year, Heat fans, like the attendance rating is brought down by 30%, because they haven't been great, but they're still like a pretty good team. I don't even know how Forbes, even gained these numbers. And it's a terrible fan base. Probably top 3 worst in the whole country.
So you think the exact opposite of Forbes, and I'm sorry, Heat fans, happen to agree with Abdul. Tambor, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, usually dinner reservations in Miami start at 9 o'clock, which is no wonder why everybody gets there around the fourth quarter. Listen, and having gone to Heat games, they do show up, and in their fairness in the playoffs, as much as I really don't like the whole white hot thing, they do get rowdy. So do give them a little credit.
All right, I'll give you that.
To Miami's defense, that city as a whole is a much newer metropolis, and I think it's still figuring itself out. They've never really had a sports team, and there's barring the Dolphins, I should say. And, of course, the University of Miami didn't get big until the 80s. But, look at the history of what that city's done. The Panthers are an expansion franchise in hockey. Jeff Warrior seems to dump and unload the Marlins every time they actually have a semblance of success. The Heat are an expansion franchise. The Dolphins have unfortunately not been a successful football team that they want. So I think fans probably in the last 10 years have really clung to the Heat's success. So I do give them a little credit, but only after 10:30 in the fourth quarter after dinner is done.
Spence, I know you have some thoughts on this. Go ahead.
I had 2 words to say. 3 words, I guess. Fan up Miami. So back in 2010, they actually released I guess it was a poster, an advertisement in the newspaper, explaining what it means to fan up, and it actually tells everybody how to be a better Heat fan. If you need to know what you need to do in order to be a better fan, you're not the top fan base. And the fact that Golden State's not on there, that's just absurd. The Clippers, sure, they're maybe a top 10 fan base, but they're not above Portland. I don't know. It's a bad list. We have Miami as number 1, which is just wrong. It's a terrible list.
Now, Spence, sticking on the Miami Heat theme here, Hassan Whiteside has been a great story in the NBA thus far. A guy who's calling NBA teams himself to get a shot at playing in the league. Can you break down his game for me?
He is 7 feet, almost 270 pounds, and he actually has a touch around the rim. So he's essentially the size of Dwight Howard, but with good hands. I actually wanted the Knicks to draft him, back in 2010 in the second round. Obviously, it didn't happen. I went to the Kings, which is a toxic franchise in and of itself. But, I'm really happy for him. If you watch him, most of his shots are within 5 to 6, 7 feet. He knows his role. He's dunking. He's finishing near the rim. He's keeping his hands straight up. He's playing defense. He's doing everything. I actually think if they had Hassan Whiteside last year against the Spurs, the ending might have been slightly different because they would have been able to play a normal-sized lineup and they wouldn't have Bosch playing center all the time. But I do think Hassan Whiteside's going to be a starting center for the foreseeable future. He's got a pretty good upside, I think.
Definitely a great story, and Pat Riley just continuing to find those gems, no question about it. Before we continue on in the podcast, I want to talk a little bit here about the OKC Thunder, who now fully healthy look like they're really surging. Tambor, you think they're contenders?
I don't know to tell. So look, I think if Oklahoma City stays healthy, they have obviously demonstrated what they can do in the playoffs in the past. And I think, as you know, I have never loved Russell Westbrook's game. He's a fabulous ball player, but this is the best I have seen Russell Westbrook play in his tenure. He is really turning it on. And I'm actually going to go ahead and retract my statement about the Pelicans. As much as I love the Pelicans, the Thunder will definitely outpace the Pelicans to get in, and I bet you they'll even actually outpace the Suns. I think the Suns, for as good of a basketball team as they are, great young talent and good front court, will still get outpaced by these surging Thunder. If they get in, they can see that they could be an 8 seed. Watch out for them to at least be a first-round upset. Do I think they go to the Western Conference Finals? Probably not.
Interesting. I am very very surprised that you took back your statement on the Hornets, but you know what? They lost to the Knicks, so it makes sense, actually. We're running out of time on this segment, so when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit. Derrick Rose, he's getting a little angry in Chicago, but he's playing well. Are the Hawks better than the Warriors? Are the Cavs getting back on track? And is a lockout coming? We'll be back.
When you party with good friends, it makes for a good time. But it takes good sense, too. Know when to say when. Thank you. A reminder from Anheuser-Busch.
Well, there's a lot else going on in the NBA. I want to start here with Derrick Rose. There's been some talk about how maybe Tom Thibodeau's losing control of the locker room, but I can tell you one thing. Derrick Rose looked like the old Derrick Rose against the Celtics on Friday night. He was just going off. Abdul, should we be worried about the Bulls right now, given this potential locker room fiasco?
I think not really. I mean, Thibodeau, they play so hard for him. He's a great coach, and I think that they've bought it, over years, they bought into his way of coaching, and the culture of that locker room is built, for hard-nosed, emotional basketball. I don't think that the reports are saying that he's too much. I think at worst, there have been a lot of reports about the friction between Thibodeau and that front office. Now, maybe that's an angle, maybe in the future, like with regards to, certain moves that they make, because everybody knows how cheap Reinsdorf is, probably the cheapest, one of the cheapest front offices in the whole league. So I think the Bulls are slumping a bit. I mean, Jimmy Butler's been slumping a bit. I didn't know has been out. But, this is a veteran team, a deep team. So I feel when they get back to full health, when Noah gets back in the lineup, that they'll be back to normal, playing, hardcore Bulls basketball. I think that this, the media buy into this a bit too much.
That's definitely, they look like they're playing pretty good basketball right now. I want to also talk about another Eastern Conference team that's been playing, unbelievably well. Spence, are the Hawks better than the Golden State Warriors?
I'd say no, just because I think the Warriors have the edge offensively, and they're already, I think, this first or second best defensive team. I do think the Hawks are easily an elite team that is a finals contending team. Love Budenholzer when he was with the Spurs, another guy who I wanted the Knicks to get. Didn't happen. But I don't know if they can really go around, make it through the finals potentially, beating a Golden State Warrior team with the best shooting backcourt arguably in NBA history, with one of the best point forwards in the NBA coming off the bench, with one of the best defensive centers in the NBA.
That's talk about depth.
Yeah, but I do like the Hawks, definitely like the Hawks.
Now, another thing that, we spent a lot of last week just blasting David Blatt. And for good reason, I would think. But Tambor, Cavs, LeBron's healthy again. He says he's feeling good. Were we a little premature in, giving them a hard time last week? Are they back on track, you think?
LeBron's only healthy again because he found Tony Bosch's the fun steroids clinic down in Miami. That's how he's feeling good again. No, I don't know if the Cavs are back. I don't want to buy into the Cavs are back because the Cavs still do one thing so horribly bad. They play no defense. It was the most aggravating thing to watch them defensively. And yes, I know their defense has gotten better of late. And I know people want to say, people need to find a way to make Kevin Love fit. Look, this is clearly a relationship which is not working. David Blatt is an incredibly successful coach. He is having a bunch of divas who are not buying into him. And I continue to hold my grudge against LeBron, against Kyrie Irving, against all these other guys. And look, there are veterans on this team, too. There are guys like Sean Marion. There are other guys in this team who should be stepping in there and interjecting and say, look, get your ego out of the way, and let's start winning some basketball games so we can go get a shit. Because at the end of the day, All of these guys wanted a ring. And so I'm not buying into the Cavs are snapping out of this funk. And, if you look at them, they've been a streaky team all year. They'll go and win 3 and then lose 6 and then win 8 and lose 4 in the next 5. So I'm not buying into the Cavs this year. I think, they're going to spend the whole year getting their chemistry right. I predicted Blatt getting fired at the end of the year, and it's the LeBron show at GM making the decision on the next coach.
Abdul, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, look at even though they're taking a big deal about this streak, I mean, look at they play. There's the Jazz, a weak Bulls, a slumping Bulls team right now. The Lakers were what kicked off the streak. And like Josh said, they're a streaky team who's still, and they gave up so much for Mozgov to provide interior defense, but he hasn't really, it's not exactly he's an elite rim protector that's going to be there for you in the playoffs. And
Sorry about that technical difficulty there, folks. We apologize. Abdul, you got cut off there. Continue that thought about the Cavs.
No, and I was just saying, I don't think that at the end of the day, their offense is still very. One guy goes ISO, Irving or LeBron goes ISO for the guy standing around, which, as we know, with the Knicks playing ISO ball for so long under Woody, does not work. So I think that at the end of the day, against elite teams, and they'll probably go past the first round of playoffs against an elite team because they're the 5th seed right now. So going up against an elite team in the playoffs, they'll get exposed, and I think David Blatt is pretty much still a dead man walking. And, maybe LeBron, Mark Jackson, who is part of the same agency as LeBron is, I feel he'll be in the mold, definitely. And I think that they'll take a year to get that chemistry worked out and see a team that they really are.
Spence, you're not happy about this.
So I'm split. Yes, the defense is absolutely garbage. Yes, they still really don't have an offensive system. But at the same time, you have the best player or second best player in the NBA on your team, and you finally have a 7-foot center who can guard the rim a little bit. He can hit the mid-range jump shot, and he'll get rebounds, which was their biggest need. So, sure, they're never going to be the defensive team that's going to hold teams to 90 points, but they can 100% be the offensive team that's simply going to outscore you. Like the Phoenix Suns team with Steve Nash, Amare, Sean Marion, those teams did not play defense. They won by outscoring you by at least 1 point, which, last I remembered, is all you need to do. Pretty sure the Cavs can do that with Kyrie, LeBron, Kevin Love, and then you have Mike Miller coming off the bench hitting threes. Potentially Ray Allen, who LeBron just spoke to. You have Mozgov in the post. Tristan Thompson coming off the bench grabbing offensive rebounds. I do think they can still make noise in the playoffs, and I still have them pegged as a potential finals team just for that reason.
You can't shut out the fact that they have some depth. That's absolutely true, Spence. I wanted to move on here. And it was an article that also came out by Forbes. They were a little bit more accurate on this one than they were on the Heat fan base. And this just goes to show, we'll talk a little finance 101 here, the extreme valuations that some of these NBA teams are getting. Donald Sterling situation getting forced out, and then Steve Ballmer, the former Microsoft CEO, buys a team for $2 billion. And now when you value some of these franchises, the average NBA franchise valuation is now more than $1 billion, which is unbelievable. When you think about Prokhorov and the Brooklyn Nets, he bought the team for a little upwards of $250 million, and now they're being valued at over $1 billion. So obviously, great return on investment there. Lakers, I believe, are coming at number 1. The Knicks coming at 2. However, Spencer, this to you, when we talk about finance, could be maybe a bubble, but to you, this is a sign of a lockout. Why do you think that?
So when the last collective bargaining agreement was signed, there was an opt-out clause for each side. I believe the players actually have the first chance to do it. They were not happy with the way the base revenue income was split. They're still not happy about how their max salary caps for the star players. I just think that with the the average valuation of a team going up to over $1 billion. With the new TV deal coming in, the owners are going to want to keep that money. The players are going to want to get a cut of it. It's just not looking good.
That's definitely a good point. And you would think that it won't be a situation we saw a few years ago where they were starting the games on Christmas Day, which obviously a lot of fans were not thrilled about. But nevertheless, the Knicks coming at number 2, despite their poor performance, they definitely have a great franchise, obviously in one of the bigger markets, with the Lakers coming at number 1. And finally, before we talk some baseball, which I'm very excited about, Spencer, you also wanted to highlight some surprise rookies in the NBA this year. Jusuf Nurkic. Did I pronounce that right?
Jusuf Nurkic.
Nurkic, excuse me.
Yeah.
Jusuf Nurkic. You thought this kid was going to be good last year, so props to you. Tell our viewers a little bit about Mr. Jusuf Nurkic.
All right, so he is 6'11", 280 pounds. He is a humongous person whose father is actually upwards of 400 pounds.
He's a big dude.
And his father also beat up 12 guys once. But Nurkic is everything that you want from a center. He doesn't really remind me of Marc Gasol in this passing, but his footwork in the post, his strength, he's a very physically imposing guy. I do think he's going to have a pretty successful future. And actually, since they traded Mozgov, he's had a couple of double-digit point games. I think he had an 18 and 12 game, a 14, 15-point game. But I do think he's going to be good. He's got a very, very, very soft touch around the rim, which is incredibly important for a big guy. And he's only 20.
You gotta love the fact that you have a 20-year-old with that much upside. But needless to say, there's been a lot going on in the NBA. The NBA All-Star roster has been announced. We'll definitely touch more on that next week, but we're definitely looking forward to having that big game in New York City, the headquarters of the Pregame podcast. And, of course, the Knicks have won 2 in a row. We'll see if they can keep that going. But Carmelo Anthony definitely has a lot to do in terms of recruiting, while his host city will have the All-Star game. I think last All-Star game was 97, I believe, when Tim Duncan was playing in the rookie-sophomore game. So
and they had the cool jerseys.
That's true. The jerseys definitely look cool. But never too early, to talk some baseball. We'll be right back.
Hi.
Hi, Mr. Bueller, will you sign my ball?
Sure.
Was you good when you played?
Not bad.
Every player in the world serious?
14 of them. Hey, I like these sneakers. Stadia, huh?
Yeah, they're from Kitty.
They never had these when I was a kid.
They did it. Then how'd you get so good?
I wish I knew. See you now.
Well, it's certainly never too early to talk baseball. It's January 21st when we're talking here tonight before we air this on Saturday morning, the 23rd. But pitchers and catchers, only a few weeks away. So before you know it, baseball season will be upon us. And given that we're New York City based, we want to touch a little bit about the local teams, the Yankees and the Mets. Tambor, being the Yankee fan along with Abdul, just walk us through what some of the moves the Yankees have been doing in the offseason, and do you think it will possibly lead to a division title?
The Yankees have done what they call retooling this year. I actually thought the Yankees have made a lot of moves where they've gotten rid of some guys who've been very valuable. So look, they've really gone out and tried to strengthen their pitching and getting a young fastball starter, Nathan Eovaldi, and have really gone to strengthening their bullpen with Andrew Miller, who they signed from Baltimore on a 4-year, $36 million deal, as well as one of their bigger trades in getting Didi Gregorius from the Diamondbacks. The Yankees, though, also let a lot of valuable guys go. They let Martin Prado go, David Phelps, who was a good spot starter for them, Sean Green, who showed some promise for them. Obviously, notably, they did not resign David Robertson, who went to
that was a surprise.
The White Sox. So,
I was very surprised to see that.
I could have let it go. I think Dylan Betances is going to be fabulous. The kid throws gas, and he's got a lead off-speed pitch to finish it off. If they don't screw him up, if they don't put in the Java Rules 2.0, maybe he'll actually be good. But no, I think the Yankees are on a much longer-term rebuilding project because the problem for them for a change is not going to be pitching. It's going to be hitting. They can't hit. They've got a bunch of senior league or geriatric guys playing. And my most favorite Yankee, Alex Rodriguez, now going to Barry Bonds and Edgar Martinez.
That's a joke. Come on, A-Rod.
So what?
We're going to take steroids together.
175 batting average. His 175 batting average should go up to about barely the Mendoza line. So the Yankees will not hit. They won't score a lot of runs. They will lose a lot of games 2-1. I don't even see them in the playoffs for another year in a row. will be another rebuilding season here in the Bronx.
Will be interesting to see Joe Girardi's job status if that ends up being the case. Abdul, you're a Yankee fan. Any thoughts to add there?
I think it's basically what's like Josh was saying. I mean, a lot of it, I want to see Masahiro Tanaka's health, coming back from, that elbow. But I think, the pitching is pretty much being set. We have that ace. But the problem is the hitting and the amount of money tied up in what is really a subpar hitting lineup. I mean, Rodriguez, that's still upwards of nearly $40 million still left on that contract. Tex, pretty much acknowledged that he was never going to be a 300 hitter at this stage of his career. That's still, about $25 million locked up. McCann, who I, probably my most hated Yankee last year, who I just don't think, I think that was a big plus of a guy in a small market being comfortable, market not being able to deal with the pressure of it as such, and really, really underperforming, which was meant to be a marquee signing. So I think that this is I'm being pessimistic. I know we don't rebuild. New Yorkers don't understand the word rebuild. But I feel that this is going to be a long, year, 2-year project in which we have to get rid of these contracts. And, I know we say we want to stay below that luxury tax, but it's going to be a long 2 years in which we really have to start looking towards making.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. If you are looking for ransom, I can tell you I don't have money. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. If you let my daughter go now, that'll be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
Good luck. All right, folks, sorry about that. We had some phone issues there, but we're all back on. Abdul, you want to finish your Yankee comment?
No, I just think that Frank ended off. It's, it's going to be whoever starts out of the gate fast. I mean, Boston's made great moves, big moves. Spending a lot of money. Baltimore's still strong as ever as they were last year. And I don't think that we can afford a poor start out with the hitting gate like we were last year. I mean, we'll never recover out of it. So I feel, I don't think we're really going to perform. I'd hope for, it's going to be a transition year, and I just think we got to be patient as Yankee fans, frankly, this year.
There's no doubt about it. You're in a brutal division. It always has, and it will continue to be, especially with the Red Sox loading up. Or you can argue they spent a little too much money, but they've been loading up, and obviously Baltimore continues to be very consistent, as we saw last year. Me being the lone Met fan here, I've seen my struggles over the past few years, needless to say. To just talk a little bit about the Mets, I'm glad they didn't go through with the Tulowitzki deal. That was rumored to send a bunch of pitching prospects, including Syndergaard, to get a banged-up Tulowitzki for millions upon bajillions of dollars. That would not have made any sense. So I'm glad they didn't pull a typical Mets and overpaid for an injury-prone player. So I'm very happy about that. In terms of the future of the Mets, I mean, they got Kadire. He's older, but he's a veteran guy who's very well respected. He's always been very consistent at the plate. He's also very good friends with David Wright, coming back from the Virginia days. So that's always a good sign. And of course, they have guys like Daniel Murphy, who are always going to continue to be consistent. Ruben Tejada, I'm not crazy about him getting that extension, but, it's the Mets. What are you going to do? I think they should go after Reyes again. I think Reyes wants to be back in New York more than anything, but knowing the Mets, they probably won't do that. But the good news is the future definitely is bright, especially with Harvey coming back. You got Syndergaard inevitably coming back up to the big show. And, of course, you have Jacob deGrom, who's just been sensational. And, you have Wheeler, who's been pitching well. So the pitching is definitely there. The question is, can they finally get the offense going? But definitely more optimistic than they were last year going into the season. But their division rival, the Washington Nationals, just reloaded again, getting Mr. Scherzer himself. signing that deal. I mean, there's a lot of questions you got to ask about, but, I mean, bottom line is this certainly helps the Nationals' rotation and makes them even more of a contender going forward. But, Tambor, what do you think this means for James Shields?
So James Shields is going to end up getting paid a lot of money for a guy who doesn't deserve to get paid a lot of money. Look, Max Scherzer got overpaid. This is yet another example of a baseball team that's going to get hosed on a bad contract if it's do them harm financially. I've said this now for some time. Baseball should have a max contract, and it should be in the neighborhood of 5 years and $125 million. If you can't work around that contract, then you have a problem with your financial habits. Baseball teams time and time again get themselves into these deadly long-term deals where they sign guys for 8 years, 10 years. And we saw with A-Rod, we're seeing it with Albert Pujols. Clayton Kershaw, maybe we won't see it. Of course, Giancarlo Stanton getting that huge deal as well, big long-term deal. Baseball teams are reckless of this stuff. But ultimately, and the market for James Shields is it's thick. I'm sure he's going to want to play for a contender. Our hometown Yankees have been looking at him. The Red Sox are apparently looking to shop around, although I see the Red Sox is more of a team that could trade for Cole Hamels, not to go acquire James Shields. So who knows? But he will end up getting paid, that's for sure.
There's no doubt about it that James Shields is going to get that money. I think you're right. I think the Scherzer deal sort of at least puts a price floor on what his contract can be, given how effective he was for the Royals. Obviously, it's still early. As the season goes on, as we get closer to spring training, we're going to have a lot more previews. But just to talk about the New York teams here, seems like the Yankees still have some question marks, as do the Mets. But I will say, I can't believe I'm saying this, and people may disagree with me, but I think the Mets' future looks a little bit brighter than the Yankees for once. That's definitely debatable. But needless to say, let's hope that both New York Mets and Yankees can go back to the playoffs where they really do deserve. And now we'll talk some college hoops.
Remember that one? He's a natural. Great timing, Joe.
Hey, that one takes me back.
I love watching my highlights.
Yeah, but what's funny is you're known as a hitter and baseball's greatest all-around player. What I remember is your pitching for Mr. Coffee.
The best I've ever tasted.
Oh, nice delivery, Joe.
You know, back then, Mr. Coffee was the best-selling coffee maker, and it still is today, because it still makes a delicious cup of coffee. Mr. Coffee, still the first choice of coffee lovers.
Well, there's certainly been some excitement surrounding the college basketball schedule as of late. It's January 21st. It's heart of conference play. It's getting exciting. Before you know it, we'll start talking about March Madness. This is the time of year where you got to get those quality conference wins in order to boost that resume. And starting off in the SEC, Spence, your Vanderbilt Commodores, being the lone Vanderbilt grad in this podcast, they had a chance to really boost that tournament resume, but they fell just short to the number one team in the country, the University of Kentucky Wildcats. Take us through that game.
I'd like to preface this actually by saying before the season I thought Vanderbilt had no shot at beating Kentucky and that this would be like some of a rebuilding year because they're a young team. But I mean, this game, it makes me really excited for the future. Kentucky gets off to a pretty decent start. Vanderbilt starts off slow. Next thing you know, Vanderbilt's down by 12, and then they start hitting threes. Now, Riley LaChance, like a 6'2", very skinny guy. He hit 3 threes in this game. Matthew Fisher-Davis hit 4 threes. We only hit 7 of 18, but I think this kind of shows you that A, Kentucky can be beaten when you have size, because Vanderbilt has size, and B, the Harrison twins are not very good and should be benched in favor of Tyler Ulis and Devin Booker.
Spencer always hitting on the Harrison twins. I mean, they did have a great NCAA tournament, but you do make a good point there. Another thing I want to talk about is this Duke Blue Devils team, which had a brutal week, obviously losing to Arcanes, which obviously, nothing's better than that, right? But they also lost to NC State a couple days before that. They go on the road to Louisville and win a gutsy game in Louisville, Kentucky, beating Montrezl Harrell and the Cardinals, who we will talk about in a little bit. And then they take care of business against Pittsburgh at home. So definitely what seemed like an almost near disaster scenario at the beginning of the ACC season for the Duke Blue Devils, they seem to recover Now, let's talk a little bit about Canes basketball, as we always do. They're actually currently still playing against NC State. Tambor, last time you told me about 30 seconds ago they were up 6. That's still the case?
58-52 Canes with 1:57 in the second half. 143, 58-44 after our recent update.
All right, so, gosh, I'm very superstitious, so I don't want to jinx anything. But, beating NC State would be a great win. Obviously, NC State had a great quality win at home against Duke. And this time in the ACC season, you got to get every win you possibly can. They came just short against Notre Dame. They were winning the entire game. And, of course, they found a way to fall short. That would have been a heck of a win for the resume, given that they've already beaten Florida, Illinois, and Duke. Tambor, you brought up a good point last week about the resurgence of Omar Sherman, the freshman. His stat line tonight is he's looking like Julian Gamble, the old self there. Tell me about that stat line tonight.
So he's got 10 points, and he's only got 2 boards tonight. But the big number that I love is 3 blocks and only 2 personal fouls. That is the biggest thing, is that Miami's front line has been plagued this year by guys getting into foul trouble. So having those 2 fouls this late in the game and being able to assert himself inside has been great. Miami has 5 blocks tonight to only NC State's 2. So loving what Coach Larinaga, again, doing it again, playing strong defense inside.
Coach L has been in the news lately for some of his off-the-court philosophies, which have, really helped his teams in the past, and, they're currently helping his teams now. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. They have a big game. Regardless of what happens tonight, I'm going to stay positive and think that we'll hold on to this W, but you never know in basketball. They take on the Syracuse Orangemen on the road at the Carrier Dome on Saturday. It's supposed to snow, which, won't be good for the Canes not being used to that weather. But I digress. You can never sell Cuse short, even though they're not ranked this year and not the best team they've had in the past. They're still a tough team to beat, especially at the Dome. But I will say, between Angel Rodriguez, Sheldon McClellan, Manu Lecomte, I think they match up very well against that 2-3. Much more than they did last year. A lot more weapons. Yeah, they have Trevor Cooney. You know what? He's not better than any of those backcourt guys that for the Canes have. So I am confident they will go on the road and beat the Syracuse Orangemen. And, of course, it doesn't hurt to have Ivan Cruz-Uceda, the 6'10", center from Spain. He's a junior college transfer. Having him back is obviously huge. Wasn't great his first game against the Fighting Irish, but you can argue there were some nerves there. Real quick, before we move on to our personality segment, Montrezl Harrell is no longer the captain of the Louisville Cardinals, which I thought was very random. Any of you guys, chime in here. Why would Pitino decide to do that halfway through the season? What is he trying to send a message to Harrell?
Apparently, Pitino didn't decide. It was Harrell's own decision. I mean, it could be just like him saving Harrell from getting personality concerns or questions or something like that. But I mean, if you take Pitino at his word, it was all Montrezl's idea. Montrezl.
I find that surprising. And Pitino has always been one to demand a lot of his players, obviously, but it seems strange that a player of his caliber would voluntarily take away his captainship. Abdul, any thoughts on this? I mean, he's an elite player.
I think, what Central was saying, apparently Harrell, did this himself for being too hard on, the Louisville newcomers. And, he's a guy, he's an intense guy, and a lot of times people who want to play, kind of like Ryan, a lot of guys want to play at that level of intensity and energy. They can't expect that out of anybody. Now, taking it to a college basketball level where you have 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, that sort of intensity a lot of those kids don't have yet, or just simply are nowhere near that level of it. So I feel like this was something legitimate to take pressure off. Maybe a team that, maybe a team that's feeling a bit of the pressure at the moment, to take a little bit of the pressure off the younger guys. That's the only way in which, that I can see him doing it. Pitino said it was no big deal. So I don't know if he's just, I don't think that's true. I think it is a huge deal. But maybe it's been a mind games playing, on the legal part to take some pressure off that team.
Spence, can Gonzaga run the table now? I mean, they're in a mediocre conference. In their non-conference schedule, they played very well. Almost beat Arizona on the road. Are they a Final Four team?
I don't think they're a Final Four team, but I think they can make it to the Sweet 16 at the very least. Like, they have size, they have good point guard play. What's the with the floppy hair?
Oh, Kevin Pangos is just awesome.
Pangos, if he were a couple inches taller, he'd be a late lottery pick probably.
And they got Sabonis, his son.
Donatas Sabonis?
Donatas, I don't know how to pronounce it, but he's a heck of a player.
Pick. Yep.
And they got the big dude. He's also another Eastern European guy.
He cannot go to the right.
He can't go right, but he's a big dude. He's got to lose a little weight, I think, to be honest with you. But he has a heck of a left hand, and I think Spencer, I think you're right. I don't know if they're necessarily a Final Four team, but I wouldn't want to play them in the NCAA tournament. Real quick here before we go on to the personalities segment to close off the podcast for week 3. 3 games I want the viewers to pay attention to this week. On Saturday, I always feel like I'm mentioning the Big 12, because bottom line is they're a great conference this year. Kansas, number 11th ranked Kansas, goes to Austin, great college town. The 17th ranked Longhorns, that's going to be one heck of a game. And then, of course, we have the Oklahoma Sooners going to Baylor. Oklahoma's 19th, Baylor's 21. And then on Sunday, probably the game of the weekend, just because of the sheer history of it, Coach K can get his 1,000th win at Madison Square Garden when the Blue Devils travel to play the Red Storm of St. John's. So definitely something to be special to get your 1,000th win at the Mecca of college basketball and basketball in general, despite how bad the Knicks are. When we come back, we will have our personality segment. We got some good ones, and Coach Gruden is coming back as well.
At Nobody Beats the Wiz this holiday season, we're playing a game that'll save you money. Whiz Bucks are our gift to you.
I'll raise you, and you save $100 with this Whiz Buck.
You'll cash in on over $2,500 in savings on everything from TVs to camcorders, audio systems to personal computers, and much more.
$200 Whiz Buck.
Look in your local papers for Whiz Bucks. Cut them out and cash them in. Nobody beats the Wiz.
We're sticking to the tradition here at the Pregame podcast. By the way, before we go into our last segment, make sure to follow us at Pregame with Us is our Twitter handle. Give us a follow, give us a shout out. And of course, on our Facebook page, like our Facebook page, and you'll see us on YouTube every week. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. That'd be very much appreciated. Sticking to our personality segment here, we got a good lineup again. Abdul, you're Jay Cutler this week, who I don't even know how to describe that clown, but what is Jay Cutler thinking about right now?
At the end of the day, my personality sucks, but I'm kind of happy. I have a completely new coaching staff, John Fox, who, experienced, coming off being a Super Bowl runner-up last year, and a Broncos team that was very successful this year, even though it was a bad loss. But I think what I'm most happy about is the hiring of Adam Gase as my new offensive coordinator. I'm probably one of the worst pre-snap quarterbacks in the whole league. That's my main problem. I cannot break down defenses at all. But what do I hire? One of the best, an offensive coordinator of probably the best pre-snap offense the past 2 years in Denver. So I think that me being able to learn from him, especially when he has faster, no-huddle offense that specializes in simpler reads, for me not to be able to think too much, and just being able to make snap decisions, especially the amount of physical talent I have, I like my future coming up. And I think I might have a resurging year, especially because I have talent that is, I have crazy talent with Marshall Jeffrey, 4K in the backfield. So I think that I like the new hires. It's a clean slate. I'm going to start again. I'm going to have a productive year next year.
Well, if you're a Bears fan, they certainly hope you're right, Jay. And Coach Gruden has decided to join us again on the Pregame podcast. Coach, what's going through your mind right now after the AFC and NFC title games?
I'll tell you, I was sitting having a spider to wide banana split with my favorite friend, Mike Pitka. And you know what he told me? Players play, coach is coach. I kind of like that man for men. But I'll tell you, Mike McCarthy, probably the biggest game of his coaching career. And he kind of looked like he was taking a nap out there. No, don't get me wrong. Napping's probably one of my favorite things, living in Tampa Bay with a whole bunch of old people. But you can't be napping in the cold, man. I don't know what they're going to do about this. Aaron Rodgers, though, guy can throw the football. You know what else I bet you could probably do? Throw a good wheel of cheese at me. I love cheese, man. It's my favorite food. I'll tell you what, though. Bill Belichick, he's a sneaky coach. I used to coach against him, and he probably stole my things a few times. By the way, I lost them. I still love football, though, man. My favorite sport. Probably next to ice curling. I love football.
Coach Gruden, we always appreciate your insight, and I happen to agree with you in terms of McCarthy. I don't know. He definitely seemed like he was taking a nap on the sidelines. Spence, what do you got?
Hello, everybody. I'm James Harden, a.k.a. The Beard. So, as most of you know, or I guess you will know by the time the podcast comes out, I am not starting for the All-Star game. I was outvoted by someone who has played in about a third of his team's games, shooting 37% from the field. I think Kobe is averaging 21 shots a game, maybe 22 points a game on those 21 shots. Why is he starting? It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, people have criticized my defense in the past. The stats back up that my defense has improved. Another thing I'd like to point out is Draymond Green recently commented on me saying the Warriors aren't even that good in a pregame warm-up. I was in a huddle with my team. Am I supposed to roll over and say, we're going to lose? I mean, we lost them 3 times before. I need to find a way to get my team pumped up. Why would I say something like that? I think it's being blown out of proportion. I think Kobe Bryant should not be on the All-Star team. He should not have been voted in, and I'm annoyed. Thank you.
Well, James, I saw you play live a few days ago, and I can tell you, you have all the right to feel that way. You are one heck of a player. I'm going to switch it up here. I'm going to be Calais Campbell, the defensive end for the Arizona Cardinals. As a member of the Arizona Cardinals, I find that I'm severely underrated with my play. But what really caused some great happiness amongst University of Miami alum and football players is that I just gave $1.6 million to the University of Miami Scholarship Fund in my name for a football player. There's a lot of negative turmoil going around the program at the U, and I think my timing could not have been better. I am showing my support to the program despite the poor press they're getting right now. And you know what? At the end of the day, once a Cane, always a Cane. Cane for life. And it's all about the U. And let me tell you, Brad Kaya, he may not have weapons. The recruiting classes may not be the same. But I believe in my school. And more alumni need to join with me in supporting this program. Or else, who knows, we may never be the same. Now that concludes our show for week 3. We got to wait another week for the Super Bowl. If you really want to watch football, you can watch the Pro Bowl. But, I mean, Andy Dalton's playing, so why the heck would you want to watch that? I mean, yeah, you got ODB. He'll play. You know what? Maybe I'll watch ODB play. You think he'll start, guys? I mean, I don't want to.
He was a 4th overall pick. All
right, so he's gonna start, right? All right.
I'm definitely watching it because he's gonna do something sick, so I gotta watch it.
Yeah, but then once he's benched, I mean, there's no point, right? I mean, come on.
True.
He did make a sick one-handed grab over Patrick Peterson in practice this week, though. More one-handed grabs for our boy ODB, baby.
I'm telling you, the fact that kid is only 22 years old is freaking scary. Do we have a final update on the Canes, by the way?
They're up.
Let's see here.
20 seconds left.
Up 3 with 20?
Like 20 seconds left. Angel just found someone.
Well, you know what? No lead is ever safe in basketball, so hopefully next week's show we can sit here and tell you that they have won that game. They will be going to Syracuse this Saturday. NBA All-Star rosters have been announced. We'll talk a little bit about that next week. Some good college basketball, obviously. Baseball is right around the corner. And you have another week to really think about whether or not you're going to choose the Seahawks or the Patriots. And it just has come in from SportsCenter. The Miami Hurricanes have won 65-60. Sheldon McClellan, 16 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists. I love it.
Anchor down,
Vanderbilt. They have some promise in the basketball world in the SEC. Who knows? Maybe they'll make the tournament. But we want to thank you guys again for joining in week 3. We'll continue this. Next week we'll have our Super Bowl picks. We'll talk more NBA. And of course we'll talk some college hoops. And around signing day for college football, we'll make sure to dedicate a lot of the shows in the future to some college football talk and whether or not the Canes are on the right path. I want to thank our executive producer, Joshua Dudley Baumoehl. Continues to do a great job. And if you do watch the Pro Bowl, enjoy it. But you got some college hoops this weekend. But guys, thanks for joining us week 3. We'll see you next week.